What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to take a little bit of a look at the Lord of the Rings living card game. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I don't talk about the Lord of the Rings card game as much as I should. For that, I can only apologise. I did a video about it when it was relaunched, and it was kind of weird because the video did very badly. And then I looked the other day, and it turned out that actually the video isn't doing badly. The video is actually doing very well. It's one of the more popular videos on this channel, which is a little bit weird to me. But rather than complain about this, I thought what we could have a look at instead was a little bit of a buyer's guide for the relaunched Lord of the Rings, so that we can have a look at exactly what's going on. Now, what is already out, the main thing you want to be picking up is the Lord of the Rings core set. And it is a revised core set. It is similar to the old core set. You don't need it if you've got the old core set. And basically what this seems to do, basically it is do what it's supposed to do and get new players into the game. It's described as having increased content and some quality of life improvements. It's looking to get new players into the game, which is lovely. And what you get therein, what you get in the box, is what you need to start playing. So there's a little bit of a description here that, each player chooses up to 3 heroes, and then you get rolling, and you need to keep your heroes healthy, watch your threat level, etc. That's obviously the Eye of Sauron, Lord of the Rings. And if the threat reaches 50 or all your heroes are defeated, you're eliminated from the game. And there are 4 spheres of influence: leadership, lore, spirit, and tactics, looking at characters like Aragorn, Berovor, Éowyn, and Gimli. And basically they play in slightly different ways. So Aragorn is your leadership hero, uses Sentinel ability to defend allies or other heroes from attacks. Lore heroes like Berovor use skills and knowledge to support players, so Berovor lets a player draw 2 cards. Spirit heroes specialise in quests and facing the dark machinations of the encounter deck head on, so Éowyn, for instance, has a whopping 4 willpower and an ability to boost it even higher. And tactics heroes are all about combat. Obviously that's where Gimli features in here, who increases his attack for each point of damage he suffered. Sounds a lot like Gimli, honestly. And then you go through with your first, couple of campaigns, well, that's not the right word, but when you're going through your little adventure. And life is nice. What's new in the core set? Honestly, not a huge amount. The rules are the same, almost all the cards are the same, but there are 3 new types of cards, which are campaign cards, boons, and burdens. Now, your campaign cards are your cards that help you play it like a full campaign. Your boons are good things, your burdens are bad things. But if you are an existing player, if you played the Lord of the Rings card game, you played the previous version, it is all available for free as print and play content on the Fantasy Flight Games website, and you don't need to buy it. Basically, if you want to get into the game, the revised core set is the best way to do so, because you get to start off fresh, and it's a better version of what was there before, and there's a couple of extra things. It's a bit more streamlined. Life is good. If you're an existing player, you're not going to need this, and that's okay. But they also then went and released a scenario pack, The Dark of Mirkwood. And what we essentially have here is 2 adventures, The Oath and The Caves of Nibeldoom. Now, these were actually originally part of the limited collector's edition of the Lord of the Rings living card game, but now we've got boons and burdens in the revised core set. You can take on this, and you can add this in, and life is good. And the goal of this is to find the goblin hideout in Mirkwood, rescue the captured woodman villagers before it's too late. Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. And what we basically got is 2 adventures, each of which is half of the journey. So in The Oath, you are trying to get to the goblins' hideouts, which is quite nice. And, we've been shown things like Spiders of Mirkwood and Goblin Trail, things of that nature. They're going to be trying to hinder you, I think is fair to say. Then you've got the Caves of Nibeldoom, where you're exploring abandoned dwarven mines to try and find the villagers we mentioned before. So we've seen cards like Cave Torch, which is going to help you search, and Lightless Passage, that's where you need the torch. And then there's going to be enemies like Cavern Wargs and Goblin Chieftain and all kinds of fun things. But it is actually slightly better than it was the first time around. There are new boons and burnings. So we got the boon like No Time to Waste as an example, and a burden like Stalking Goblin. You will probably recognise that art from the front of the pack. But again, all the new campaign-related cards will be made freely available as print-and-play content on the website. So if you've already got these because you bought the collector's edition way back in the day, you can still play it, use your old cards, and just print out your boons and burdens and campaign cards from the website, which honestly sounds absolutely brilliant. And there's a rather lovely little note on the Fantasy Flight article about this that says, back when the limited collector's edition for the Lord of the Rings the card game first released, we made a promise to our players that we would one day make the scenarios included in that limited release widely available as their own separate product. We can finally say we fulfilled that oath, which is really rather lovely. Now, if what you're looking for is instead some new characters to play with, great news, ladies and gentlemen, because there are 4 new starter decks which have gone and been released as well. We've got Dwarves of Durin, Elves of Lorien, Defenders of Gondor, and Riders of Rohan. And a couple important things to note, these are playable decks right out of the box, which is lovely. And they do contain extra cards that you can use for deck building in addition to the regular decks, which incidentally is what you see for a game like Marvel Champions. But there is a note that if you own all of the game's expansions, there are no new cards in these starter decks. But they have been tailor-made for new players, so that's essentially your decision. Do you want to go ahead and buy these because they're tailor-made and they're good and they're all put together lovely? Or do you want to turn around and go, actually, mate, no offense, but we've seen this already. I've got all these cards. I'm fine. So we've got the Dwarf starter deck, and we've got allies like Ered Nimrez Prospector and King Under the Mountain that let you discard cards from your deck, and then Erebor Hammersmith can add those cards to your hand. Sounds kind of fun, honestly. Or Eren Lewid Miner or Hidden Cash automatically come into play or grant bonuses when they're discarded from the top of your deck. I mean, come on, it's dwarves. Mining is what they do. I love that there's a bit of a mining thing going on here. And the deck is also described as focusing heavily on the kinship of the dwarves. So Dine Ironfoot and Ori rely on having multiple dwarf characters in play, whereas Erebor Record Keeper can make sure important characters like Dane or Dory are always ready when you need them to be. I like this, and I've always been a bit of a dwarf fan myself, so this sounds pretty good to me. Elves of Lorien, it's going to bring in popular characters like, Galadriel's an obvious one here. And what we've got is allies like Greenwood Archer and Nath Guide, who have one-use abilities that trigger when entering play. But then you got cards like Orifin and the Tree People that help you actually get multiple uses of those abilities, which honestly sounds kind of fun. And the heroes synergize with allies that repeatedly enter play. So as an example, that Galadriel I showed you earlier, allies you control do not exhaust to commit to the quest during the round they enter play. Cannot be the only one that thinks that's a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. That's pretty cool. Defenders of Gondor, you got Boromir, yeah? Do you need anything else? As soon as you get Boromir, that should be enough, surely. And honestly, this sounds like the deck which is going to drive me absolutely crazy, because there's a bunch of cards that shine when your threat is 40 or higher, bearing in mind you lose when it gets to 50, which sounds terrifying, but you've got stalwart defenders like Gondorian Spearman and Defender of Rammus, which apparently is going to make things all right. Apparently. Sounds terrifying, honestly. But you've got Prince Amrahil who can avenge your fallen soldiers, and you got Boromir I mentioned earlier. If he's got at least one resource in his resource pool, Gondar allies get buffed, and Envoy of Pelegir here can help make sure that you do that. I'm going to be honest with you, that one does not sound like the deck for me. And then we got Riders of Rohan, and you got Eomer here, who is a very popular character. That should make you very happy. And what essentially we've got here are cards like Escort from Edoras and Riddlemark Knight, who basically rush into combat with wild abandon, it's described, and frankly, that sounds about right. They're Riders of Rohan, But still, that sounds a bit terrifying. Or you got cards like Westfold Horsebreaker and Westfold Lancer that have really nice effects, but you've got to discard them in order to actually do so. But then again, Angmar, I mentioned earlier, gets a nice buff until the end of the round after a character leaves play, so maybe that's not the worst thing ever. Like I've said, all 4 of these decks, they are now out, they are now available. They're all different decks, they've all got very different playstyles. They're not necessary if you've got all the old expansions, but, you know, they're there. Now, the one that isn't out yet is Angmar Awakened. And this actually comes as 2 separate products. We've got the Hero expansion and the Campaign expansion. And I probably shouldn't need to tell you, but I'm going to make it clear anyway. The Hero expansion, that's got all the heroes in. And the Campaign expansion has got all the campaign stuff, the scenarios, things of that nature. Yes, there are some new scenario cards like we've seen in the other releases. Yes, they will be made available for free on the website for those that already own this, because this isn't a new campaign. This is pretty much a reprint of the Lost Realm and Angmar Awakened cycle from back in the day, one of the earlier cycles from the Lord of the Rings card game. But again, I don't know who's tried to do this. I did a couple of years ago. I tried to actually go and get started with Lord of the Rings living card game. It was a nightmare. So much out there. So awkward. Now, we got all this stuff, and this works perfectly, ladies and gentlemen. This works perfectly. So in terms of heroes, you get 2 heroes from each of the spheres I mentioned earlier, including Merry and Aragorn. Who doesn't want Aragorn? I'm sure some people don't want Merry, but everybody wants Aragorn, surely. That sounds like fun. And of course, as you would expect from a campaign expansion, what you end up with are some new mechanics that weren't in the revised core set. New things come in. So, Ranger of the North is an ally with the encounter keyword, and it has the same card back as the encounter deck, and they're not actually included in the player decks, but they're put off to the side until a card like Ranger Summons can put them into the encounter deck. And then, of course, you have an ally coming out from the encounter deck rather than something bad, which is clearly a very, very good thing. Or side quest cards that are played during the planning phase, like most non-event cards, and players can choose to progress on it instead of the main quest, which obviously means you're not getting closer to winning, but you are gaining a bonus in doing the side quest, which is clearly, you know, clearly a good thing. As for the campaign pack as a whole, what you basically got here is a full adventure, a bunch of scenarios that go together to make one nice big adventure. So you start off with a simple task of aiding Dunedain in an orc hunting mission, and then of course, you know, it snowballs from there, as these things tend to do. And again, the campaign expansion has new mechanics as well, like Iran and Amethil, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing them terribly. They're good cards, but if either of them is defeated, you lose right away. Just clearly a little bit awkward. And again, we've got some side quests that you can be getting into, like Search the Ruins. And then once again, you've got boons and burdens coming in here, which, you know, you can get online if you need to. And that, for the moment, is what we know. The revised core set is out. You've got the Dark of Mirkwood, which is a scenario pack giving you a new adventure to go on. You've got the 4 starter decks, the Dwarves, the Elves, the Defenders of Gondor, and the Riders of Rohan. And they are, you know, new characters to play with to actually, you know, a deck to go through the campaign. And then you've got Angmar Awakened, both the hero and campaign expansions, to give yourself either more heroes or more adventures to go on, or, you know, maybe even both if you're feeling a little bit dangerous. And that's what we've got at the moment. An unusual deal here. If this ends up being a popular enough video, if people like these kind of videos, I will happily come back and revise this every few months, showing you exactly what's out and giving you the lowdown on what you need, what's skippable, etc. Because, honestly, I really wish I'd done that for the last game and been round since the beginning. It would have made things an awful lot easier. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about this, and I want to know if you've gotten into these, if you're excited about them. I want to know basically anything you want to tell me. And if you've got any tips for new players, chuck them down as well. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, That's where we talk about a whole bunch of card games, including the Lord of the Rings living card game. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.